Somewhere, on a bridge between Thailand and Laos, there is a piece of road where every car in the world crosses over. Traffic swaps sides. Two-thirds of humanity drives on the right, one-third drives on the left. And the line between them isn't a mountain range or a river, it's history. Here's the strange part. For most of human history, almost everyone travelled on the left. So something flipped the world. And it wasn't a law. It was a sword, a wagon, and a revolution. Start with a simple fact about bodies. 9 people in 10 are right-handed. Now put a sword on your hip. It hangs on the left, so you can draw it with your right hand across your body. Ride down a narrow road and you want the stranger coming toward you on your right side, where your sword arm already is. Everything follows. You mount a horse from the left, so you want the left edge of the road. Roman quarry ruts in England are worn deeper on the left lane going out. The ancient world drove left. Because the ancient world was armed. Now cross to colonial America, where the roads are full of enormous freight wagons pulled by 6 or 8 horses. These wagons have no driver's seat. None. The teamster rides the rear left horse, so his right arm swings free for the whip. And from up there, with a wall of horses beside him, he can only see one edge of the road clearly. The left one. So when another wagon comes, he keeps his own wagon to the right, and the two pass with the drivers side by side, watching each other's wheels. Pennsylvania wrote it into law in 1792. Not philosophy. Just where the man was sitting. Meanwhile, in France, the road had a class system. Aristocrats drove their carriages on the left, at speed, forcing peasants to scatter to the right side. Then, 1789 happened. The Bastille fell, and suddenly looking like an aristocrat was a very dangerous fashion choice. So the nobles quietly moved their carriages over to the right, the peasant side, and blended in. What began as camouflage became habit. In 1794, Paris made keeping right official, a traffic rule born from fear of the guillotine. Then, France produced a man who moved armies across a continent. Everywhere Napoleon's forces marched, they marched and drove, on the right, and left the rule behind them, like footprints. The Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, Germany, Poland, parts of Spain, and Italy. You'll often hear it was because Napoleon was left-handed. That's a myth. The real reason is simpler and more human. The new France defined itself by doing the opposite of the old France. The old order rode left, so the revolution rode right, and then exported it at bayonet point. Britain watched all this and did the opposite of the opposite. In 1835, keeping left became national law, the old, armed, medieval habit now written down. And Britain had something Napoleon lost, an empire that kept growing. British engineers laid out roads and railways across India, Australia, New Zealand, southern and eastern Africa, and wherever they went, traffic kept left. Not by argument, by blueprint. One island's habit became the daily routine of hundreds of millions of people who had never chosen it, which gives us something genuinely strange. Look at a world map of driving sides today, and you are not looking at geography. You are looking at a map of 19th century empires. France and America painted the world right, Britain painted its quarter left, and the countries in between usually picked whichever side their biggest neighbour already used, because being different is expensive. Every border crossing where traffic swaps sides is a scar showing where one empire ended and another began. The roads remember what the borders forgot, which raises an obvious question. Can a country just change its mind? One did. Sweden drove on the left, surrounded by neighbours driving right. In a national referendum, the Swedish people were asked whether to switch, and voted no, overwhelmingly. Roughly 83% said no. The government switched anyway. On the 3rd of September 1967, at 5 in the morning, every vehicle in Sweden stopped, moved to the other side, and started again. And here's the twist: accidents went down. Insurance claims fell by around 40% and stayed low for 2 years. Everyone was so terrified of dying, they finally drove carefully. So if switching is survivable, why doesn't anyone do it? Because the cost keeps growing. Sweden switched when there were fewer cars, simpler roads, and cheaper signs. And it still cost a fortune. Today, you'd have to rebuild interchanges, replace bus fleets whose doors open the wrong way, re-sign every motorway, and retool factories. It's the same trap as money, as language, as the letters on your keyboard. Once enough people share a standard, being right stops mattering. Only being together matters. The world is locked into two mirror image systems, forever, because nobody can afford to be the one who moves. So, why does almost everyone drive on the right? Because a Roman kept his sword arm ready. Because an American teamster sat on the wrong horse. Because French nobles were afraid of the guillotine. Because one general marched further than the others. Nobody alive today chose any of it. And every morning, billions of us obey these dead men without noticing. At every junction, on every road, in perfect unison. That's worth remembering the next time something feels natural, obvious, just the way things are. Most of what feels natural is only someone else's old decision that nobody ever got around to changing. If this made something click, subscribe. One big question, plainly answered every week.